Didn't we see these guys on WrestleMania? This is your look at the new NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, Tokka and Rahzar. After exposing a wolf and snapping turtle to the same mutagen that created the crime-fighting quartet and their master Splinter, Tokka and Rahzar were born, making their debut as NECA's first figures from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, are the Foot Clan's newest members to defeat the Turtles. Tokka and Rahzar are massive, standing at over 7 inches and 8 inches respectively, with over 30 points of articulation from head to toe, including articulated eyebrows on Tokka. Before taking a trip down to Turtle Town, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the Tokka and Rahzar figures stand. Now, one could say, technically, and I put that in bunny ears, you just can't see right now, that Rahzar is the taller figure if you're only looking at the figure's head sculpt. However, it is to note, if you look at the spikes on the back of Tokka's shell, they're about the same height as Rahzar, making them roughly about the same height to one another. That being said, let's go ahead and get these clocked in. That being said, I'm going to measure it off to the tops of Tokka's spikes, as that being the tallest point on the figure. We're going to stop it right there. According to the readout, Tokka, with his spikes included, stands 7.8 inches in height. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that Tokka is 19.9 centimeters tall. Now switching that back once again to inches, and now we're going to measure off to the very top of Rahzar, stopping it right there. The readout on Rahzar is 7.7 inches in height. And again, switching that to centimeters, revealing that Rahzar is 19.6 centimeters tall. Let's get in there some size comparisons. We'll bring in Raphael and we'll bring in Michelangelo, just a couple of the Turtle brothers I grabbed for the time being to give you an idea that Tokka and Rahzar, yes, are bigger than the Turtle brothers, as it should be. They are bigger in the movie. I could even just say as well that these figures could stand to be even a little bit bigger. But the fact that they are bigger than the Turtle brothers is more than enough for me. Let's do some other comparisons here. We'll bring in Splinter. A lot smaller, yes, you could say that. Let's also bring in Shredder, just the regular Shredder, as we certainly don't have yet a Shredder in his purple outfit. Hold on, I know what you're going to be saying. Let's bring in a Foot Soldier, kind of going to give you an idea. Here we go. And obviously the biggest comparison we can certainly make as well, I guess I probably should move Splinter over just for the time being. Let's also bring in the Super Shredder. I know you guys were thinking, yeah, there was a Shredder from The Secret of the Ooze, but it was the Super Shredder, which technically didn't share the same screen time as Tokka and Rahzar. He was his much smaller self at that point, but they kind of give you an idea of how they stack up with one another. Tokka and Rahzar, of course, are bigger than all the regular human characters, a lot bigger than the Turtle brothers, and still smaller than Super Shredder, who is the biggest of the lot. The figures come with tons of accessories. Let's have a look at those right now. Starting first, anybody with a sweet tooth craving some donuts, perhaps? Well, if you certainly have seen Secret of the Ooze, you may want to stay cautiously away from these jelly-filled delights, because they're not filled with strawberry jelly. What's neat is the fact that this cardboard box has been crafted by NECA Toys and put together. I know in previous times when we've gotten things that have to be folded together, I feel like I have fingers, and yet when I'm folding these things up, I might as well just be wearing oven mitts. NECA Toys have already done it for you. Whoosh. One thing, though, you have to be aware of is when you do get your figures out of their plastic tray prison, before you throw that tray into recycling, just check underneath the tray. Underneath the tray, there's a clear bag. Inside the clear bag, there's a cardboard box. Inside the cardboard box, it sounds like a children's nursery rhyme book. There's absolutely nothing. That's kind of disappointing. Yet. Because coming included with this, they also give you a stack of donuts. Now, one donut is missing, which we will talk about in a second, and the donuts fit very easily into the box. I'm not doing it just yet because you can also flip them around, and I know the intended plan probably wasn't that, but I'm wondering if perhaps they sculpted the underside with holes deliberately in them so that they could use them as bagels for a future release. I'm sure, just thinking nonsense at the moment, but I kind of can't help but think that the way that they've sculpted it, they've deliberately sculpted it so that they can use them as bagels for a future release. Just remember I said that. But in the meantime, though, we're going to want to display this with the donuts, of course, facing up with a nice dusting of white snow along the top area there. And like I said, there is one donut that's missing. We can go ahead and fit that inside the box. Just sort of tap it down. And it's not going to be going anywhere. It's going to be staying perfectly in place. Now, I would probably be inclined to display these donuts, not necessarily with Tokka and Rahzar, but instead I feel like I want to display these with my cartoon turtles, and I might find myself doing that. Going back to the idea, though, of giving us this cardboard box and having that flip side of those donuts kind of looking like bagels, I kind of feel like, again, we're going to be getting this re-release down the road. Just remember I said that. But the box does fold up, and you got yourself a nice little display piece that you can display along with your figures, whatever figures you decide to display those with. And put that down. Now, there is one donut that's obviously missing, and that would be this donut right here. In the movie, both Tokka and Rahzar are scarfing these bad boys down until realizing there's something inside one of them, which would then, of course, be the case with all of them. Inside, there's a little square, a little cube of anti-mutagen. You can see it's right there in dark green. The detailing on this is quite good. You can even see like little bite marks on the one side of the donut. Again, you flip it upside down. This doesn't look like a bagel. In fact, it actually kind of looks like the top or bottom of a hamburger bun. But you can fit this either in their hands, one of two ways. You can either just lay it dead flat on the middle of their palm like that, where they're discovering that something is afoot. And like I said, there wasn't jelly inside those donuts. Or what you can also do too, and both Tokka and Rahzar come with hands designed for this. See this hand with the thumb that's really close to the pointer finger? We can actually take it and wedge it underneath the thumb, between the pointer and the thumb, and you've got yourself a donut holding hand. Fancy that. You can display the figures with that. Moving that to the side, really like the idea that we got those. Now the turtles, of course, in the movie had to resort to Plan B. Plan B, even though it doesn't start with B, is a fire hydrant. And you only get, sadly, one of these. In the movie, they pin them down, and they both get hosed down. But sadly, in the case of this set release, you only get yourself one fire hydrant. I really wish that we could have gotten actually two of these. But you do get one of them, and as you can see, it's molded nicely in red plastic with a little warning, not labeled on, but printed on, a little band of black. And the little hose itself is attached by very soft, pliable plastic. Just be careful of that. And, of course, the little button on the top there. Nice little touch. And of course, if you're going to be getting a Tokka and Rahzar, you would want to be getting a couple of fire hydrants. But in this case, you get yourself one. To come included also with this set release, you get yourself the canister of TGRI. Nicely painted here in silver, sharply printed with TGRI on one side and on the other side as well. With, of course, that clear plastic, somewhat translucent green plastic in the middle. My guess is the whole thing has probably been molded in this neon green plastic, and then simply they just painted all the elements of the outer canister in the silver. Like that. Really nice touch. They include those. Let's have a look at some of the weapons that come included with them, depending on your choice and which preference you prefer. He comes with a pipe, and they come with a board of wood. It almost looks like a limb that's been cut in half. Starting first with the pipe. The pipe is all a molded gray plastic. You can see there's a hole. It doesn't look like it goes straight through. Like you can't see my hands going on the back end of it. But it's all been molded in a dark gray plastic. And by giving it that dusting of silver, just brushing it on the surface is really where then you see the sculpting show through. All the little scratches and stuff that they put to the surface of it. That looks really neat. I don't know, I probably will display this, I think, with Tokka. And then maybe for Rahzar, I'm going to display with this half. It literally looks like half of a limb of a tree that's just been either ripped or cut in half. You can see the detailing done to it. It really does give you that vibe and feel that it looks like wood, like real wood. You can see there's the bark on the one side. Again, very similar colors to the pipe in the sense that it's a dark color and then they just brushed silver across the edge of it. Well, it's not literally the exact same color, but similar enough. Then, of course, on the inside of the wood, you can see there's two-tone effect going on at play here, like a cream color paint that's been applied to more of a darker, warmer mustard yellow, perhaps. You can see the grain on either side of the wood. And again, this fits into their hand. I mean, they all come with the necessary hands that if you decide for yourself you want to hold. Now, this one's a little bit thicker, that does fit very comfortably, and it's not going anywhere in their larger gripping hands. This one, like I said, I've just currently got for Tokka, but you could easily use the pipe for Tokka and use this larger stump of wood to be displayed with Rahzar instead. The last of the accessories is the shield worn by Rahzar, which, as you can see, not only has been sculpted, but painted accurately to the way it looks in the film. I'm not 100% certain if this is the way it looks in the film, but I appreciate the fact that NECA didn't completely connect the loops that are located on the back of the shield. If you've ever had a figure that wields a shield, you know the problem that you experience when you're trying to feed the shield onto the forearm. And because they haven't fully connected these, it makes things a lot easier when it comes to displaying this on the figure. So for example, we'll go ahead and take Rahzar, and all you really have to do is just pry these back, fit them over the arm, then take the other hook and do the exact same thing. And because really, like I said, it's not connecting itself to anything, you're literally just feeding this over top of the arms. It's more than enough, as you can see. It's not going anywhere. And of course, you're only going to really see it from this side. When you look at it from this side, it's more than enough to get that believable look that, yes, it's looped all the way through. I really appreciate the fact it's a small thing that NECA did actually do this with non-connecting loops, or non-connecting straps to hold the shield in place. Seeing as we've already got Rahzar picked up here, let's just put the shield to the side for the time being and get a closer look at the figure. I'm still torn as to which one I actually like more. Still feel I'm moving towards Tokka, but there's a lot of interesting points to make when it comes to Rahzar here. I could very well comfortably say these are the figures of the year until NECA tops this, which I really find hard to believe. The amount of detail and paint that they put into both these figures is really quite incredible. Of course, we'll get a closer look at Rahzar's face. As advertised on the back of the box, Tokka does have facial expressions. In other words, he does have the articulated eyebrows. Rahzar doesn't have that, but what he does make up for, though, is he has all this additional fur that they've sculpted not only to his face, but all these tufts of fur that stick out from his chin. I mean, look at the mangled-looking mouth, disgusting-looking teeth, and inner jaw. You can see there's the tongue right inside there. Really liking the way that this looks. They've given it also a nice wet look to it, so it looks like he's covered and dripping in saliva. The mouth does open and close. Not much, though, just enough there and there. I find if I have the mouth completely closed shut, it seems prone to wanting to kind of drop down by itself. And that's not a gripe at all. It's just probably the way that there's so much sculpting going on here. It would be probably really difficult to kind of keep that all together. You can see he's got the bright crystal blue eyes. I don't know if he's supposed to have it, but you'll notice that he's actually got an inner ring, almost like a pupil, and then he's got a pupil inside of that. I definitely have to go back and check that movie again to see if that's true. The coloring is nice and warm. You go into more earth tones with all these browns. Several different shades of brown working here. Some lighter, almost beige-like colors, more medium browns, and you got more almost rusted browns brought into the front, or like his beard area of his face. Really liking the way that this turned out. Now, more so to Rahzar than to Tokka, he's all armored up with things that he found around the junk pile. So, like he's got, for example, a front grille on a car. This is just attached by these chains. These real chains, actually, that are strapped, if I spin the figure around, they're all kind of harnessed up around the back of his neck and kind of crisscrossed on the back of his torso. It seems more than enough to keep this in place, but they haven't glued this, so you will want to be careful when you are moving the figure's waist around that you don't result in breaking any of those chains. I mean, I could say they could have added just a little bit of glue, maybe like just at the top there, just to prevent that grill from shifting around. But I guess you do want a little bit of wiggle space, especially for the fact that you're going to be rotating the figure's torso. That's probably one of the reasons why they kept this as a loose appliance. But again, like you've got all these things that you would have found. So, for example, he's got the big, larger shoulder pads, little plates of metal that all look like been laced together. I can't imagine that they're doing these craft projects themselves. Is this something the Shredder has designed himself, and maybe he's in the back making armor for these guys? It's hard to say. Little pieces of tire as well. Looks like there's all these little spikes that are sticking out from the treading of the rubber, and that's really nice. I like the way that that looks as well. A nice little bit of silver that's been added to the ends of those, just enough. You can see, like, there's a couple of them that have little, there you go. You can see right there, a little bit of threading on there as well. So it looks like there's some embedded nails sticking out. Probably a little bit sharp to be against his fur, but he's probably got a lot of fur padding going there as well. The knees are very similar to the shoulder pads, kind of these, kind of, I don't know, like just grooved. I'm guessing it's probably rubber that they would have had on the top. I mean, certainly the material that they used for the figure is more of a softer plastic. That's the case both in the shoulder and also in the knees as well, covering over the joints that you really can't see until you start moving the figure. But the joints are actually right underneath these knee pads. Of course, he's got his big, large, giant feet. Nice touch as well is that they actually sculpted wolf pads just underneath on at least the 3 toes and the middle section right above the pegs, where of course these can peg into a display stand if you find that the figure isn't standing properly. You can of course attach him onto a display stand, and it guarantees that he's not going to be falling over on you. Let's go through the posability on Rahzar. For that, I actually want to shift the head up as far as I can get it, because I wanted to show you guys what's going on underneath, behind the scenes. I would have thought that this guy would have only had the head attached via ball peg to the top of his neck, and that'd be the end of it. But what they actually did do, cleverly enough, is that NECA actually had a secondary neck appliance. So you can see, right at the very top of the head, it's on the top of the neck, but then this neck appliance is attached to this piece of his torso. Because of that, you get a lot more of a range than what you would normally be able to pull off. So the head does look down quite a bit, it does move up quite a bit, and it does also rock back and forth. And I feel like most of that is actually thanks to this neck appliance, not necessarily the ball peg at the top that's connecting to the head. Very well done on that part. As for the mouth, of course, it does hinge open and close. I find the mouth is nice and tight, although I do find, again, the mouth, if you want to have it really close to itself, when you let go of it, it seems to automatically want to drop open. That's a very small gripe. Not enough to the point where the mouth is going to be completely open, but it will always kind of leave like a little bit of an opening right there, so you can see the gnarliness of his mouth inside. Oof. As for his body, let's have a look at that right now. You will want to be very careful of this, because we already looked at the fact that this grill armor piece that he has on the front of his body, because it's a separate piece, it's attached only by chains. When you are moving his torso, just tread cautiously, especially if you're turning it too sharply this way or too sharply this way. I think if you aren't careful, you're going to snag, pull, and potentially break those chains. Because of that, you will want to, again, be very careful when you are rotating the torso. It works back and forth on a ball joint. You can move it up, and you can also move it down as well. Shoulders hinge out, and the shoulder pads, being how high they are, and because they're softer plastic, it doesn't seem to limit being able to move the arms up. In addition to that, you can move them forward and back. Moving them forward, I think, is where you really want to be careful of as well. I don't want to keep saying things you want to be careful of, but again, these are figures that are really geared towards adult collectors. You really want to be careful, of course, when it comes to moving the arms forward and back, because again, this may be separate, but you also don't want to be pulling against it where it could separate it from the top of its shoulder, because essentially it's just attached just at the top there. It's just pegged in place. But you can move the arms forward and back. Just be careful of that. Move them out. You can be careful of that as well. It has a double hinge on the elbow. You can rotate also where that first hinge is attached to the bicep. It swivels back and forth this way as well. The hands rotate all the way around, hinging it back and forth. Nice detailing done to the hands. I didn't spend a lot of time, I know, talking about Rahzar's hands. Really nice on the way that they did that as well. Slightly lighter, you'll see, the coloring on the fingers versus the rest of his fur. The legs split out. You can move the legs forward and back perfectly fine. There's a swivel basically where that thigh is attached to that peg joint. He has single hinged knees. I thought he actually would have had 2 hinges, but it seems like he only has a single hinge working here. The lower leg rotates back and forth, of course, and you can have a hinge back and forth on the leg or on the foot, and you also have an ankle pivot. You can see ankle pivoting back and forth right there. So that is Rahzar. Again, I'm not really sure which one I like more. I love the design of Rahzar, incorporating all the extra browns and stuff they did to the fur, but I still feel like my favorite in this set could be the Tokka, which we'll have a look at right now. Now moving on to Tokka. I may have said over the course of this review, probably when we were looking at Rahzar, that I was on the fence as to which figure I liked more. Admittingly, Tokka was my favorite of the two in Secret of the Ooze, and I guess that would then translate. I mean, seeing as these are uncanny likenesses to those characters, I suppose it would translate to Tokka being my favorite of the two. So we're going to go ahead and stick with that. He definitely has a lot more going on from a sculpt level, especially when you consider all the additional rows upon rows of spikes on the back of his shell. In case you are curious, all these spikes are softer plastic. You can see by the fact I'm bending and manipulating these. Still, I would say, much like running in the house with scissors, you probably would not be wanting to run around in the house with Tokka in your hand, because you fall against this guy. You're going to feel these spikes pressed against your skin. Just a lot of cool looking sculpt on the back. Now that's the back. Of course, you're going to obviously want to see the front of him. This guy is advertised as having expressions. Now, what that means is you can go in and you can manipulate his eyebrows. If you want to give a more angry expression, you can pull that off. Just bring those eyebrows down. If you want to have him a more surprised look on his face, well, you can bring those eyebrows up. These are very similar to if you had picked up the Crash Bandicoot, who also had articulated eyebrows. Sort of works the exact same way here with Tokka. I guess to get that full finished look, let's get in there and open up his mouth, because that's something else that you can also open on the figure. Yeah, he looks a lot funnier with his eyebrows up like that. Some shocking stuff I've seen online with people posting pictures of their Tokka. You can actually go in there, and there's articulation on the beak. But you can also take the beak off to give you an awfully frightful looking face. I'm surprised NECA actually went in there and painted everything as much as they did. But instead you get this weird kind of nightmarish looking lizard person. I know, the idea is that the beak is supposed to peg into place. And it does for the most part. Sometimes, though, when I am moving the beak back and forth, because it is, after all, just pegged in place, I find a lot of times the beak does pop off. So you will excuse me in advance that if I am moving this beak around, this is going to fall off. Essentially what it is there's just a peg on either side, and you will want to fit into one of his lizard nostrils and then fit it across, stretch it across, and plug it in on the other side. And like I said, through that, you get a little bit of additional posability. Just be careful, though, because if you don't want to lose that, because you're not going to be getting Tokka, you're going to be getting some nightmare lizard person instead. Oof, it's scary looking. But check out all the detail done to the side of his face, though. I mean, not only do you get this dark, military, almost swamp-like green that they use to the skin, but there's all these other lighter colors of green at play here as well. All these big, large spots outlined in gray. There's a lot of elements of texturing that they've done to these. Sort of taken what they've done with the movie Turtles and enhancing it tenfold. Because the movie Turtles, if you remember, had all these little spots on their skin. Tokka has that and then some. Again, you can see little wrappings there on the side of his wrappings around his wrist, for example. He's also got that around his elbows. It kind of actually looks like he's got these little feathers, and I don't think that's obviously necessarily the case, but lots of spikes all over his arms, all over specifically his shoulders. And again, just all this stunning looking sculpt against the surface of the plastic. One thing you'll also see, or maybe sometimes don't see, let's just move the arms up for a second. I mean, we looked at the neck and all those little flaps of wrinkled skin, but check out the amount of detail that they even incorporate between the two halves of the shell. A lot of cool, stunning stuff going on in there as well. And yes, there is some articulation, which we'll talk about. We'll just move his arms down for the time being. I like this, that they've added all this additional airbrushing of black in the dividing panels of the front of his shell. I really like that. It just adds a little bit of extra depth. Again, both these characters, and if I hadn't said it enough, nearly enough when it came to Rahzar, I'll reiterate it when it comes to Tokka here. Both these figures look like their screen counterparts. Again, we look at the back on the shell. Just all the individual spikes. I know we talked about that already, but look at them. Look at them. Moving on. As for the detailing on the rest of his legs, I'm sorry, I just keep going back to those spikes. The detailing done to his legs, not only, again, you've got those moderate tones of green, you've got a little bit of a kind of a grayish green that's incorporated to like the areas around his muscles, for example. Yes, this turtle has muscles. But again, you've got all those nice little spotted details that they've also added there as well. Moving a little bit further down, similar to what the other turtles also had, he has knee pads, elbow pads, and yes, he's also wearing fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves. That joke never gets old. And then, of course, you've got down all the way down to his feet. He's got himself 3 on the front, and then one little hind foot located at the back there. And then if you flip the figure upside down, similar to Rahzar, they've gone the extra mile and sculpted detailing on the undersides of his feet. These are things, of course, you're never going to really see on the figure. I mean, how often at times are you going to have some weird friend over lifting up all your figures? Hey, is that Tokka? And then he's going to be lifting up. Wow, he has sculpted underpads. No one's really going to be doing that, but I appreciate the fact that NECA Toys would have gone the mile and sculpted areas underneath his feet. Because they could have easily just made these completely flat. They didn't do that, and I appreciate the fact that they did. Checking out the articulation now on Tokka, I'm going to be very careful on his beak, but he does have two sections of his neck, similar in design to the way we looked at with Rahzar, in the sense that he has a peg here, and then he's got a peg here. So you can not only move the neck back and forth here, but you can also move it up and down, and basically working the exact same way. It actually kind of reminds me of like the Godzilla figures where they had sectional necks. He has up and down movement here, up and down movement here, and of course all the things that those articulated points would grant you. So you can swivel the head back and forth. Collectively, separately, it's entirely up to you, but you can move the head up and down, and you can also rock it back and forth. I love the look of that slightly tilted head. It works, it seems to work really well for Tokka and Rahzar. Again, you've got the articulated mouth, just being careful of the beak. You can open that up. And again, nice detailing on the inside of the mouth that opens and closes. We've already looked at the articulated eyebrows, and yes, he does also have articulation on the beak. Just very carefully moving that up and down, because I find like the beak pops off a little bit too easy on this figure. Let's go ahead and straighten that off. As for the shoulders hinge out. You're a little bit more limited just due to the fact he's got all the additional spikes on the tops of his shoulders, but you can move the arms forward, you can move the arms back. He has a swivel where it connects to the bicep, and then he's got a double hinge on the elbow, one there, and then he's got a secondary hinge right here. In addition to that, you can also rotate the hands all the way around, and you can hinge them back and forth. You probably have seen all this time that he does have some articulation in the top torso. Basically what it is he's got a ball joint connecting this half right here, to the lower half. So in other words, you can tilt this torso back and forth, and you can slightly, moderately move it back and forth this way as well, just a little bit. As for the legs split out. You can go forward, you can go back on the legs, no problems whatsoever there. You can swivel at the top of the thigh. A single hinge on the knee, which is just really tight on this figure, but I'd rather, again, tight joints on these figures than really loose joints. The lower half of the leg swivels back and forth. You can move the feet back and forth on that hinge joint, you can see right there. And then he does have articulation similar to, I would have said his brother, obviously brothers from another mother, but you can also rotate the ankle back and forth that way as well. Solid looking figures. Love these figures. I said it at the beginning of this review, I'm sure, and I'll reiterate it again in the end of this review, but I could see these figures as being like the figure of the year. Well, I guess collectively they would be figures of the year. The amount of detailing that they incorporated to both of these figures, let's just bring these guys both to the center frame here. The detailing that they incorporated to both of these figures is quite incredible. Again, of the two, I feel like my favorite is the Tokka, who seems like he's almost in a running stance right now. But both of the figures are fantastic. Not only do they look like their movie counterparts, but the detailing and the articulation that they incorporate into both of these. You can get them in interesting enough poses, of course, due to their size. You can only do so much with their legs, but you can use, of course, a display stand to go along with that as well. But I'm really, really happy that these came out. Again, we don't have much in the way of Secret of the Ooze. We have Super Shredder. We now, of course, have Tokka and Rahzar. I'm hoping we're also going to be getting ourselves the purple-clad Shredder to, of course, go along with these guys released by NECA Toys. Whether you consider yourself a turtle cartoon figure collector, or you consider yourself a turtle movie figure collector, or you fall into that faint category C like I do, where you religiously collect both the lines, you got to admit we've been rather spoiled with all the offerings we've been getting lately from NECA Toys for both the cartoon and the movie verse. Although I feel more the focus has been geared towards the cartoon, and understandably, there's a lot more territory I feel to cover with the cartoon. There's so many more characters that would be strong candidates for figure releases. As well, when you have to think about the movies, it takes a little bit longer to get movie figures because, of course, they have to get the actor or the actress to sign off on their likeness. Not to say necessarily Tokka and Rahzar had to sign their likenesses off. Maybe they did. Maybe they were just asking for really high contract signing agreement costs. Maybe NECA Toys finally just said, all right, we want to make figures of Tokka and Rahzar. Let's just give them what they're asking for. I hope that really isn't the case. But really, when you think about it, there's not really many other characters from the movies that we could really pluck from. Yes, of course, everybody's still wanting that purple Shredder just before he becomes Super Shredder in Secret of the Ooze. And at the very top of that list, everybody is still anxiously awaiting an April O'Neil. Let's hope she gets released sometime soon. But if you had asked me a couple of years ago, who would have been the top of your list for wish list characters you'd like to see NECA Toys produce figures for? The very top of that list for me would have been Tokka and Rahzar. I like April O'Neil, but the idea of getting Tokka and Rahzar would have been just as equally cool. These guys look like their movie screen counterparts. The only other figures that we've gotten of Tokka and Rahzar were the ones released from Playmates Toys. And for the time and what they were fine and good figures, but they weren't the most movie accurate. And finally, we're getting movie accurate figures released here from NECA Toys. And I really do have to tip my hat at NECA for the fact that we are getting figures that, for all intents and purposes, I'm sure they can't use these molds for anything else. They had to produce brand new molds from scratch for Tokka and Rahzar. They probably can't use them again. Unless they give us Turtles in Time versions of Tokka and Rahzar. Because after all, they did appear in the Turtles in Time video game. So there's always that possibility that if NECA wants to dabble back and make use of this mold again, just give us the Turtle Time releases of both Tokka and Rahzar. They're pretty smart. I'm sure they already thought about that. As for your video question for today, let me know who you prefer more, Tokka or Rahzar. Like reading your comments down below. I'd also like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Tokka and Rahzar that we had a look at in this review. In some capacity, these guys are available right now. I don't want to say they're easy to come by online. You could have pre-ordered these also through NECA, but I think right now, as it stands, I think the only way that you guys can go about getting these is probably going online and paying. Hopefully not the inflated scalpers prices, but if you guys can find these at a good price, I definitely highly recommend you guys picking these ones up and adding them to your collection. Today we were having a look at the NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze, Tokka and Rahzar. And I still stand by the idea that I think Tokka is my favorite. But let me know down below in the comments section which one you guys like the most. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, I know we do a whole lot on this channel, Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that bell notification. And make sure you come back to this channel, like I said, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Lots of videos also coming your way as well. We're also going to be looking at some more NECA releases, so keep your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.